sorry about that. Just some last minute technical difficulties, but we're going to get started. We'd like to thank you all for being here. Quick introductions. Myself, I'm James Battle. I am currently Mid-Atlantic Regional Chair of the National Black Law Students Association. I am a 3L at Howard University School of Law, and in the fall, I'll be doing eviction defense at the Legal Aid Bureau of Buffalo. And I'm going to turn it over now to Aisha to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aisha Burwell. I am a 3L at UDC David A. Clark School of Law in Washington, D.C. I'm also a community advocate, and I've been doing some activist work for the past 5 years. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you guys all for coming.
Yep, and of course, as much as I would like to think otherwise, you're not here to see myself and Aisha. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Benjamin Crump, Esquire, listed amongst the most influential people of 2021 by Time 100, Ebony Magazine's Power 100 Most Influential African Americans, the National Trial Lawyers Top 100 Lawyers, and the 2014 NNPA Newsmaker of the Year. Attorney Ben Crump is referred to as Black America's Attorney General. Through a steadfast dedication to justice and service, renowned civil rights and personal injury attorney Benjamin Crump has established himself as one of the nation's foremost lawyers and advocates for social justice, winning a number of record settlements and verdicts for victims and families that have faced injustice. He has worked on some of the most high-profile cases in the US, representing the families of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, the residents of Flint, Michigan, who were affected by the poisoned water of the Flint River, as well as the family of Henrietta Lacks in a landmark reparations case. In 2021, St. Thomas University College of Law announced the Benjamin L. Crump Center for Social Justice in his honor, which will open doors for minority students pursuing law degrees. His book, published in October 2019, Open Season, Legalized Genocide of Colored People, reflects on the landmark cases he has battled and how discrimination in the courthouse devastates real families and communities. He is the founder and principal owner of Ben Crump Law. Attorney Crump, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you very much, James. I pray that you all can hear me clearly. And I apologize. I find myself stuck in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, trying to get to New Orleans because Atlanta had bad weather and all the flights are being canceled. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, Brooklyn, who is waiting for her father to get home because it's her spring break. And so that is my challenge today. Hopefully you all can give me some arguments if I don't make this plain to be able to convince my little girl that it was certainly not my fault that I did not get home to her in time. With that, go ahead, James.
No, I was going to say, with all that in mind, of course, we thank you so much for being here and just taking the time out to speak to so many budding legal professionals. We really do appreciate it.
No, absolutely, James. And to Aisha, you all are in Washington, D.C. I was just there with Breonna Taylor's mother to meet with the Civil Rights Chair, Christian Clark, who heads up Civil Rights Division of the United States Justice Department, to say that you all, since the state of Kentucky failed this Black woman, you all have an obligation to do something, especially when we know that they lied on the probable cause affidavit to get the judge to sign the no-knock warrant for them to bust in her house at 1 o'clock in the morning and mutilate this innocent Black woman who was a lot like you all, same age, same demographic, same objectives, getting her college degree in nursing. And she was mutilated by 9 bullets while she was practically naked. And so we were arguing that they have to do something, that they can't let her death be in vain. And then from there, I went the next day while in DC, because anybody knows me know we're constantly moving because there's so much injustice in America when it comes to Black and brown people. Stamaya Denson Jackson, some of you in DC may have heard of her. but this was a young lady who took her life after being bullied. And when her mother sued the school system, my co-counselor, Ruby May, a great lawyer in DC area, they were astonished to find out that there is no law that says you cannot devalue Black people and women to the same level of white people. And so they projected what was her likely net accumulations over her life. And it was $2.5 million less than a white child, a white male child. And so since that time, we've been fighting to change the law to not be silent on the issue, but to be intentional on the issue that Black women and girls are to be valued the same as white men and boys. It could be no different. And obviously Black men are devalued also when it comes to the valuation they put on white men, but women are valued even less than men. And this is in 2022. The only state to have spoke to this issue is the state of California, where the California Assembly said in wrongful death claims, you cannot have an arbitrary system that lets people act on their biases and their prejudices. So I may call on all you great law students in the greater DMV area to come and help us set a precedent in Washington, D.C. And so I say all of that to say that, like my mentor, Thurgood Marshall, my personal hero, I understand that it's going to take an army of social justice warriors to be able to overcome and defeat the systematic racism, discrimination, and implicit bias that is baked into the very foundation and fabric of American society. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll be starting off with some of the questions that we have for you. One of the main questions that we wanted to ask, and I really do thank you for sharing those stories, is many people, especially those within the Black community, are experiencing hopelessness and frustration because we are still fighting against so many issues that past generations have fought against. How do you continue to see the light throughout your efforts? And do you believe that the social justice landscape in this country is moving in the right direction?
Well, objection, that's a compound question, yeah. Aisha, but I will do my best to address them. Okay. You know, you all have to remember, even though there is still great injustice in America, you have to acknowledge that we are making progress. When you think about just this year and these recent historical victories, whether it be George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or Dante Wright, killers being, held accountable. We understand, I'm here in Louisiana, that we expect the Department of Justice to indict the police officers that killed and conspired to cover up the murder of Ronald Green. These are things that didn't often happen in America 15 years ago, 20 years ago. There were no Seventh Amendment civil relief when we think about the historic civil settlements of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Not that any amount could bring back the value of their absence on this earth, but we're making progress. And the other thing that gives me hope, and I give this response in colleges and universities all over America, and that is, I know that we're going to win this war. I don't have any doubt in my mind that we're going to win. And the reason is because what I learned in first year law school, when they were trying to teach us about precedent. And, you know, yeah, I may remember the 1Ls and those of you who are still 1Ls, when they kept saying everything must be based on precedent. You know, we got to have consistency in the law. So we want the laws today to be consistent with the decisions of the past or have some reasoning to it, to the past. And then we also want to make sure that the laws in the future will be able to have, and people are trying to say, hey, Tim, I apologize. As I'm coming up to this event, take me back there. I need to keep going. I don't want to be disturbed. And so you want them to have consistency with the laws for the future. And so that's why they keep talking about precedent. Everything has to be based on precedent. And, you know, I rejected that, y'all, because I understood that if everything was based on precedent, then we would still be slaves, because the United States Supreme Court has said that slavery was legal in America. I mean, they had acknowledged that, you know, they had overcome the Declaration of Independence and said that doesn't apply to Black people. And therefore, that was the precedent in America. So I rejected what they were trying to tell me in first year law school, that everything had to be based on precedent. But Aisha, I understood what they were trying to teach me. They were saying that precedent, what has happened in the past, is a likely indicator of what is to happen in the future. And when I think about the precedent of Black people in America and the precedent of how we overcame at the founding of the country being defined as 3/5 of a human being, how we overcame at the Middle Passage, how we overcame the United States Supreme Court in the Dred Scott decision saying that there were no rights that a Black person had that a white person was bound to respect, how we overcame the Reconstruction and the carpetbaggers and the poll taxes after the Civil War, and how we overcame Plessy v. Ferguson, another United States Supreme Court decision, how we overcame Jim Crow, and how we overcame Jim Crow Jr., PhD, Esquire. And when I think about that and all those things that we overcame, our ancestors being raped, being tortured, being murdered, being lynched, how we overcame all of those things, what it tells me is there is nothing that the enemies of equality can throw on us today that we can't overcome. We gonna be all right based on the precedent of our ancestors.
Thank you so much for that. That was very powerful. And, you know, definitely helped shift a lot of perspectives, if I could speak for, you know, anyone else in the call. So, you know, with all of that in mind, what do you think is the largest threat to civil rights in our country right now?
All right, that's an easy one, James. And God knows we need y'all to get to the front line quick. Y'all graduate, get that little quiz known as the bar exam out the way, and come and join us. We need all men on deck, all women on deck, because voting rights is under assault. When you think about the most basic right in a democracy, that is a right for each individual to have a right to vote to determine who our leaders will be. And the fact that you have this voter suppression like we've never seen before in states like Texas, states like Georgia, states like Florida. I mean, it's asinine, the things they're coming up with to stop us from voting. And so if we don't have our voting rights, then everything else is diminished. I mean, when you think about these criminal justice aspects where we're fighting for justice for George Floyd and Breonna and Ahmaud Arbery, well, if you don't have people in the district attorney's office or the attorney general's office that feel that they're accountable to our community, then it's a simple issue of mind over matter. We don't mind. I mean, they don't mind doing us wrong because we don't matter, because we can't vote them out of office. So the greatest assault on our rights right now is the assault on voting rights in America. If they can deny our ability to be critical mass, not to decide the outcome of the election, but to be critical mass, then they would have had the enemies of equality would have had a major victory in a battle. Because we see just in this last election, when President Biden and Vice President Harris were elected, it was because of Black people in urban communities and cities, whether it be Detroit, Atlanta, uh, Chicago, those places is what put them over the top. And if they can suppress that vote, then they can almost guarantee that they're going to steal the elections. And that's why we got control of the Senate ever so slightly. And that's why the Democrats have control of the White House. But right now, the enemies of equality, just like we witnessed that, they witnessed it too. And they came up with a plan to say, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. These Black people will not dictate who the leaders of America and the free world are going to be.
Thank you so much for that. And to shift focus a little bit towards, of course, you talked about voting rights and, electoral politics and how important that is. To shift focus a little bit towards, our judicial system. Are there any cases before the Supreme Court as of recent that you've been watching more closely than others, whose impacts might, have some serious reverberations for the community?
Well, there are several, but I will say what I would love for you all to pay attention to is we have a case, my law firm has a case before the Massachusetts Supreme Court, Renty versus Harvard University, about these daguerreotypes that were the early photographs that were taken of Papa Renty and his daughter Delia that are worth about $100 million. And we're suing on behalf of their descendants, their lineal descendants. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh,
You just
okay.
you cut out for a bit, but you're back.
Okay, don't know what happened. But in the case Renty v. Harvard in the Massachusetts Supreme Court, it's on behalf of the lineal descendants of Papa Renty, saying that these people have a right to recover these daguerreotypes that are stored in Harvard's Peabody Museum that are worth about $100 million, and not Harvard, who was not only complicit in slavery, but was active in trying to defend that Black people were inferior to white people, while Abraham Lincoln was going around talking about Emancipation Proclamation. Their professor, Louis Agassiz, said, no, I can prove that Black people are inferior. And with these crazy theories about the size of our heads and the size of our buttocks and our lips and all this ridiculous theories. And then he said, but I wanted ocular proof. And so he wanted to find what he said was a pure African that hadn't been commingled because they had raped all our mothers and daughters, and they didn't want to have any Black person that had white blood in them, so they were looking for a pure African. They found that in Columbia, South Carolina, because that's where most of the slaves in America came into America from, in Charleston, South Carolina. That's why they have the Slave Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. So long story short, Professor Agassiz went down on the plantation, found Papa Renti, who they referred to as a pure African because he was one of the last Africans to come into America, because we know through the study of history, they outlawed slavery in 1803. And so they found Papa Renti, they stripped him down naked, took photographs of him, measured him. Then they did the same to his daughter Delia, and she had a tear in her eye. There's a famous book written called Delia's Tear, and they said it is symbolic of all the rape, misogyny, and sexual harassment of women of color in America by white men. But they took the pictures of her, and these pictures are famous. If you watch movies like Roots and 12 Years a Slave, you see the image of Papa Renti that they use. Well, this family is saying we have a right over Harvard, since Harvard was committing crimes when they took these photographs. Why should they benefit from a criminal act? And so it's a case of first impressions, because if we are successful, it may very well be the first case of reparations in America, where an American institution was forced to give reparations to lineal descendants of African slaves. And so that is a big case that we're watching, because then we can have the blueprint to try to take something to the U.S. Supreme Court on reparations. And so that is the case I would have you look at.
Wow, that's very fascinating. I definitely have to do some research. It's my first time hearing about that, but that sounds incredibly fascinating. And since you did mention the Supreme Court, how do you feel about the nomination of Judge Katanji Brown Jackson? And do you think that her appointment can lead to significant change in how the Supreme Court adjudicates civil rights cases?
I think so, because you have a voice in the room. And I will tell you, I'm somewhat biased. Judge Katanji Brown Jackson is a friend of mine. I live in Florida. When I'm there, I travel a lot, but she was from Miami, Florida. Her father is a member of Omega Psi Phi. I'm a member, so we have a lot of connections. And we would teach at Harvard every year at the trial symposium. And so she is a brilliant, highly intelligent, very articulate sister who will be an asset to be an associate justice on the Supreme Court. I think she's probably more qualified than most of them that are there on the bench now, even though you're going to hear through these hearings that this Black woman is so unqualified and so forth, because, you know, they try their best to say that we're inferior when they know that we are superior. And she is definitely superior on many accounts. But even though the liberal makeup of the court was still being the minority, I think the dissents, Ruth Bader Ginsburg gave some brilliant dissents. Now Sonia Sotomayor is giving some brilliant dissents. And I think Judge Katanji Brown would join that lineage and giving some incredible dissents. And that's why we got to get on the bench to challenge Clarence Thomas, to challenge, you know, all these conservative justices who would think that you all, no matter how well you perform, they would continue to say that you all did not deserve to get a spot at a law school or in a bench because of the color of your skin. And they, as you see what they're doing with this failure to teach history, rightfully so, talking about we don't want our children to feel guilty about stuff that happened in the past with this critical race theory. I mean, that is very scary. And you have people not only in local municipalities, but, you know, Clarence Thomas's wife was at the January 6th insurrection, and they all were espousing this rhetoric about critical race theory. And so that's why we need Judge Katanji Brown Jackson in the room so she can articulate and be able to use her intelligence to beat down some of this rhetoric that I think is an affront to us being able to go forward as a country. So that's why we got to get this sister confirmed, and we got to have every Democratic senator vote for her. Other than that, she will not be confirmed because everything is so polarized, and they just won't vote for her because she's a Black woman. And I got time for two good ones, and then they probably gonna pull me out.
Awesome. I'm going to hand it over to Aisha to ask the final two questions, but just want to emphasize how important that is, and so much so that NABALSA members from all across the nation are actually flying to Washington, D.C. on Monday to support Judge Katanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearing. And we partnered with Demand Justice to really demonstrate that we have her back. So the fact that she's a great friend of yours and you all have so much history and you know the phenomenal jurist that she is and that she's overqualified for the Supreme Court makes us so happy to hear.
She would be a good mentor for each and all of you, especially the sisters.
I agree. Thank you so much for that. So one of the last couple of questions we had, it's kind of a twofold question just for everyone to get some advice. Are there any steps that we as Black students can or should be taking to help advance civil rights in the US? And what advice would you give to the future Black attorneys of America on how they can continue this advancement, regardless of what field of law they choose to pursue?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Aisha. No matter whether you decide to be a corporate lawyer or you do stuff that doesn't directly speak to civil rights, we all have a role to play, and there's something you can do to help increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think you want to think outside the box as much as you can. I know Reverend Al and Congresswoman Maxine Waters have anointed me with this moniker, Black America's Attorney General. And I try very hard to make sure that we try to take these matters seriously when people are looking at you and trying to say what is the act that we do. And I go back to who said, I am trying to go after, racism. You like to go around just starting fires. He said, no, I'm after the fire itself. I'm trying to destroy the racism itself. Ever it shall rear its ugly head, I am out to destroy it. And so I was on with lawyers all across the globe of African descent recently. We filed an urgent appeal with the United Nations over the ill treatment of people of African descent in the Ukraine that were held back at gunpoint from being able to get out of the country. I mean, you had Black women with babies in their arms who white soldiers put guns to their head and told them to get off the train while they ushered in young white girls. And so it's these type of things. When you see an injustice, you have to do something. You have to think outside the box. And it was interesting, me and my co-counsel, Jasmine Rand, that Attorney Crump, how do you have the audacity to go file something with the United Nations for Africans in Ukraine? And, my response was, how do I have the audacity not to do anything? To sit silent while I see brothers and sisters being inflicted with brutality and injustice, as if their lives were not as worthy of being saved as descendants from Europe, because they had blonde hair and blue eyes. And so we filed that urgent appeal and it got a lot of attention, but more importantly, it had a lot of other people, once we had the courage and the intellect to figure out something to do, that others joined in from London, from Africa, from Canada. I mean, we had lawyers of color all across the globe join us and signing on to this urgent appeal. And so that's what I think you young people who are going to carry the torch for all of our people in the future, whether you want the responsibility or not, because unfortunately, you will see it. I filed a lawsuit against Google today on behalf of Black people being discriminated, because if you don't take a stand, you will find sooner rather than later that they think of just like they think of all of us. And we have to be defiant every opportunity we get in demonstrating our brilliance, our strategic abilities, and our intellect to be able to overcome the stereotypes and the bigoted attitudes of our people. And I know some of us may think, well, that doesn't apply to me. Well, I'm going to tell you today, it applies to you too. If Trayvon Martin taught us anything, it doesn't matter what gated community you're in, what the index of your salary is, what titles you have behind your name, what's your zip code. It does not matter. The first thing they see when they look at you is Black. And with everything that they'll strive to Black people, that applies to you too, even though you may think you're special. We're all in this together, and we have to remember that we have to continue to lift as we climb. We can never ever get to the penthouse and forget about the brothers and sisters who are down in the basement, because they matter. And if we're not trying to pull them up, then shame on us. What good is having blessings if you don't try to use it to bless others? What good is it having influence if you don't use it when it matters most? And so I choose to use the influence every day to try to uplift our people, because if we don't do it, who will?
Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you so much, Attorney Crump. I know you are in a time rush, but those were our last two questions. We would like to thank you so much for coming out and taking the time out to speak with us. I sincerely hope that you're able to get on that flight and see your daughter. And thank you again for taking the time out to speak with us. We really do appreciate it.
Hey, thank you all, and remember,
Attorney Crump, you froze. I'm not sure if you can still hear us. Uh-oh.
Thank you.
He may
I was
join.
just saying this, if you all can hear me as I leave. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, if you remember nothing else I said this evening, just remember, you all are the answers to the prayers of the slaves in the cotton fields. You all are the best that we have to offer the world. Don't you ever forget that, despite what they may try to tell you. You are the best we got, and we believe in you more than you can ever fathom, more than you can ever imagine. We believe that you all will take us places that we've never been as a people. So rise up to the occasion to know that You are the cream de la crop, the best of the best. You all are twice as good as the other lawyers you're going to be going against, because this life has required that you would be twice as good. So don't ever shy away from the challenge. Thank you all in advance for being the people who deliver our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Attorney Crump, so much.
You're welcome. God bless you all. I'm getting on this plane.
Safe
Safe
travels.
travels. Thank you. To everyone on the call, thank you so much for attending, and thank you to our amazing moderators from the mighty Mid-Atlantic region, James Battle, our current Mid-Atlantic chair, and Aisha Burwell, our past Mid-Atlantic chair and activist in Washington, D.C. We are having an amazing, I don't know, I can't speak, networking reception at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, with so many phenomenal firms and companies from across the nation, and as well as the Black Public Defenders Association and so many more. And we're giving away our final 3 bar review courses in full. Thank you to our sponsor Helix for that. So I hope to see you all there, and thank you all so much for attending this evening.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys.